All right, welcome everybody to our third webinar, telling your story, branding your campaign and telling your story. I'm super excited to have Laura Orwig and Tony McGee from Right On Fundraising with us today. Before I introduce them though, we're just gonna have a little bit of housekeeping as always. Yes, this video will be available on our training website at the end of it. So if you miss anything, you need any of the materials, no worries. You can go to nwagivestraining.com and you will find it there. You can also find other great resources there to help you with your campaign. And I highly recommend that you subscribe to that website so every time we post something new, you'll get a notification. Okay. One other reminder, by now you should all have your Pure Charity web pages done. If you're brand new, if you've just registered, I'll cut you a little slack. But everybody else, you need to send your URL to me to make sure that your page goes live and everyone can find you. Okay, that being said, I'm going to hand it to Laura and Tony. Hopefully you all were able to attend last time. You've already met Tony, who has her CFRE and her MBA and a ton of experience, both with organizations like the Alzheimer's Association, the American Red Cross, American Heart, as well as being a teacher at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. But you haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting Laura Orwig, who is the Research and Communications Manager. She has a ton of experience with creating content and strategy and managing channels. But I think the most interesting thing about her is that she spent a good deal of time cruising around the United States in her RV, vlogging her experience. So how cool is that? That being said, I'm going to pass it over and you guys can take it away, please.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Carol. So Laura and I work for Right On Fundraising, and we work with nonprofit organizations to help them increase their fundraising and increase their capacity. Our tagline is that we provide fresh fundraising solutions to high impact nonprofits. That would be you. So if we can help you after this to raise money or to increase the capacity of your organization, you'll know how to contact us. We've just opened an office in Bentonville, and we're so excited to be in Northwest Arkansas. Go ahead, Laura. So this campaign really is a pick-me. You have 6 weeks now to get everyone to understand, all of your constituents, people who are interested in you on any level, to understand that they need to give to you on April 8th. And so this isn't the Northwest Arkansas Gives platform, but this is a platform that shows they need to know either the name of your organization, which would show here, or the category that you work in. And so if you can scroll down and see the category, they may be able to pick you. So developing those two pieces of information over the next 6 weeks is crucial to getting money, because you want people to pick you, right, when they get on the website. Go ahead. So branding your campaign and telling your story is more than just logos. People give to purpose-driven campaigns. So that means that your organization, if you have a clear story, you are already valued higher by customers and donors. And so we're going to help you look at that right now. Laura is going to give you some tips and tricks on branding, and then we'll move forward.
All right, so as Tony discussed, your branding is more than just your logo. However, your logo is a piece of that, as it acts as the symbol of your organization. So likely as you see some of the logos on the screen, you have some kind of emotional response. So for example, when you see the Coca-Cola logo, they've done a really good job with their branding and training us that when you see that logo, you think of happy, good times. When you see Ford, for example, you may right away be a Ford or a Chevy person. There's typically no in between, and this is strictly based on their branding. So again, these logos act as a symbol for the organization. They connect us with the experiences that we've had with these organizations. The branding is more than just that logo, it's that reputation and perception. So the definition on the bottom of the slide says brand is a set of ideas, images, feelings, beliefs, and values that are carried around in a person's head. So it's not just what you can control, like your logo or color palette, it's also the way people feel and think about you. So if someone calls in to your organization, that experience that they had, whether good or bad, that's part of the branding. If they see a Facebook post and think that it was great, or maybe they didn't like it, that's also part of your branding. So just remember that everything that you do, that's all a reflection of your organization and its branding. And I'd just like to say to you, throughout this presentation, if you have questions, feel free, we'd love to make this interactive. You can either chat those or just unmute yourself and we can talk. So what about nonprofits? Is the same true? On the slide before, we had a bunch of very large for-profit organizations, but does this carry over to nonprofits? And the answer is yes, it does. Although you may not be in the Ford Chevy scenario where people are literally just picking one company or organization, donors often choose more than one organization in the same kind of cause. So how do you make sure you're one of the organizations they're supporting? It's all within your branding. It's creating that emotional connection with impactful stories to make sure that you show up higher on the list to donate to. Your brand might be the only thing that makes you stand out. All right, so why is your brand important? Your whole brand is your identifier. Your brand is important because it brings awareness and recognition. So when you use that logo color palette, you tell your story over and over. You're providing that awareness and recognition. You'll have that top of mind recognition when, as Tony mentioned, someone goes to the NWA site later down the road and they want to give to an organization. Maybe they don't completely remember what your name was, but they need to at least remember, hey, don't they do this? So that part is really important on the awareness piece. Your brand also provides an emotional connection. So in the nonprofit world, your emotional connection is really important because that's the fundraising piece. So the emotional connection brings in donors. We really want to hit home on that piece because it's so important. You want them to like you and understand that you're doing really important work. Your brand is also important because it provides credibility. So as you're consistently posting that over and over, people see, they see that you're doing what you say you're doing. And also it helps if you have other organizations that can post your stories, your logo, your brand for you. And finally, your brand is important because it gives you a perceived value. So companies like Apple or Coke, they've been working on their branding for years and have spent countless time and resources on it. And they're huge because of it. So again, your brand brings that value piece. So on the next slide, we're actually going to hear from our CEO and founder, Lindsay Jordan, and she's going to discuss the why, what, and how. If you've seen Simon Sinek's video, this is basically what she's going to break down, but it's really important for your marketing strategy, and we'd like to give you an overview of what that looks like.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Jordan, the founder and CEO of Right On Fundraising, and I am thrilled to be able to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, which is the why, the how, and the what of your messaging. Nonprofits are typically really good at talking about what they do. You can think of these as your direct services. So the books that you provide to kiddos who need to learn how to read, food, shelter, clothing, basic needs, and the services you provide to survivors of domestic violence, the health services that you provide in the community. These are what you do. And typically nonprofits know what they do inside and out, and they're really good about talking about it. This drives some giving, but it actually does not drive sustainable giving over time to your organization. Describing just what you do as an organization leaves a gap with donors. They wonder, well, what does that eventually accomplish? What is the thing that this nonprofit is working towards? We know that they give out books, but why? What does that accomplish exactly? Knowing your why and your how actually help deepen the relationship with donors and makes it a whole lot easier for you to secure not only more gifts, but bigger gifts over time. So you may be familiar with this whole why, how, what concept, because I didn't come up with it. I would be a bazillionaire if I had. You've probably heard of Simon Sinek. He did an incredible TED Talk like in the 90s. It's pretty old at this point. But I definitely encourage you to go out and look it up if you haven't seen him before. Simon Sinek is Simon spelled S-I-M-O-N, and his last name is S-I-N-E-K. And there's a 20-minute version of the whole talk, and then there's a 5-minute version of just what we're going to talk about right now, which is the power of why and how and what. So if you think about a target, kind of like the Target logo, since we're talking about logos today, in the middle of the target would be your why. The next ring out would be your how, and the final ring would be your what. That's the thing you're probably already good at talking about. Your why, which is the center of the reason for your existence, is usually summed up in your vision statement. So some vision statements I've come across over the years that I really love. They're short, they're big, huge picture, and they paint a really clear idea of what would put the organization out of business eventually down the road, right? So for the Alzheimer's Association, for example, the vision is a world without Alzheimer's. That's a huge vision. And it would definitely take more than one organization to fulfill that vision. But that is where the organization is going, right? That's their why. That's their whole purpose for existing. All the programming that they do, all the donor acquisition, everything about their existence feeds into this central idea of a world without Alzheimer's disease. The how, so how do you get to a world without Alzheimer's disease? The how is a 36,000 foot up. So it's not looking down from the satellite, it's looking down from the airplane, but it's still more elevated, right, than being down in the day-to-day work on the ground floor. So for the how, I'm going to give you an example of another organization that I worked for, which is YWCA. So the why, going back to the middle of YWCA, their vision was to eliminate racism and empower women. How they did that on a local level was by empowering families, strengthening communities, uniting people. These are descriptive terms, but they're also a little abstract, right? There's wiggle room in there. How do you unite a family? How do you strengthen a community? Well, that's where your programs come into play. Now we're down into the what. Your programs are how you accomplish your how, which is how you accomplish your why. Do you see how they feed off of each other? You have to start with why. You have to have a really clear understanding of why you exist and what problem you're trying to solve before you can move to how, which is how you're going to actually impact that change. You have to know how you're going to accomplish something before you can describe what you're going to do, and your what is your programs. To simplify this, think of your why as your vision statement. Your vision statement should align with why you exist, what you want to accomplish. Think of your how as your mission statement. Still broad, but descriptive enough to talk about how you're going to accomplish the why. Think of your what as your programs, as your direct services. If you don't have direct services, then think of it as how you describe yourself, your convening, the different things that you do in the community. Once you have really clear messaging on your why, your how, and your what, guess what? You have a messaging strategy, and you're ready to move forward and inform the community on exactly why you exist, what your impact is going to be, and why they should support you.
Okay, so I know that can be kind of a lot to take in. Just so you know, you will have access to that video after this training if you'd like to kind of go over that again. But basically, to sum it up, the why, how, and what of your organization is your marketing strategy. So those need to be really clear to you. If you can't explain it to someone, that's a problem, right? Because how are they supposed to know what you do? So you really need to nail down that why, how, what before you even start choosing media channels or creating content. So again, the why is the vision, the how is the mission, and the what are your programs. And once you have this marketing strategy down, you can move into your content. So as Tony mentioned, you're all kind of launching into these 6-week branding campaigns, and we want to make sure that they're very clear and consistent. So our recommendation is that you just have one message for this branding campaign. It will typically be, we need you to give on April 8th for NWA Gives Day, sorry, so that we can end hunger. Something kind of short, rememberable. So that's your call to action. And throughout the year, this call to action can change, but when you're doing these kind of mini campaigns, we need to just focus on one point. Any of your messages should also be short and to the point, so you shouldn't confuse people or make it ambiguous. Let them know clearly what you need from them and what your organization is doing. You can also use photos in your content messages, and this is a great way because, so for example, if you're scrolling through Facebook, you may stop at the post with photos, but you're probably just going to keep scrolling past anything that's just text. Our eyes just don't settle on that. There is a caveat here though in photos. So first of all, you want to make sure that any photos that you post, you have permission to post. So that's making sure that if these are actual clients you've served, you have a release for them and they're okay with having their face on your social media. Another point to this is making sure that it is tasteful and appropriate for you to post photos. So for example, during this ice storm the last week, there was a church who took in a bunch of people as kind of a warming center, and that's great. People were there having fun, playing cards, and a bunch of photos were taken. And the church actually did get permission to post these photos, but when they did post them, there was kind of this outbreak from the public that it made it seem like the church was capitalizing on this crisis. So even if you have permission, it's still good to get kind of an outside view of what does this look like to the public. And then finally, if you do serve a sensitive population, you don't want to disclose any identities in those photos. So testimonials are another way that you can kind of connect a face to the services that you provide. It's a great way to show the public how your organization is making an impact. And then finally, personalize any kind of content that you can. And I'll kind of touch on this in a little bit with MailChimp, which is an email platform. There are many great ways that you can personalize messages. All right, so this is just kind of an example slide. These are actual Right On Fundraising posts. We found that for that emotional connection, humor works really well. That might not work for everyone, so it might not be appropriate for your organization. That is for you to decide. But this is kind of our example of using a photo to kind of draw people in. We have fairly short, concise text, and then there's also that call to action. So we're either asking them to go to the website or to reach out and message us. Here is another example slide. So for example, this is for an anti-trafficking organization. So on the left, we have a photo of an actual client that we do have permission to use, but we still don't want to disclose her identity. And this is a great way to still kind of portray, hey, there are real people that we're impacting. On the right, we've used interns or volunteers as models. So you can still put their faces out, it's fine, but it's just utilizing people in a different way to portray the same message. All right, so once you have that content down, you want to utilize every single channel that you have access to. So as a general fact, it takes 18 times for an individual to see a message before they take any action. So over the next 6 weeks, you want to be seen. This can start with your website. Since you own this, it's a great way to put out whatever messages that you need to. Just make sure that it's very up to date. And you can also utilize either a banner or a pop-up option to provide information about the upcoming NWA Gives Day. Social media is another owned platform, so you can say whatever it is that you want on here. I will say there is kind of a sweet spot here on the frequency of those posts. So we found that pages with under 10,000 likes actually lose 50% engagement if they post more than once a day. So make sure that you're not over posting. We found that sweet spot is actually 3 to 5 times a week. Email is a great way to reach out to your constituents. Probably don't want to use it as often as social media. And we'll kind of touch on this in the end. We've got a deliverable with each of these and the frequency that we recommend you use them for. But you can use platforms like MailChimp and Constant Contact to send out automated emails. So both social media and email, you can schedule out. If you got, say, a few hours in the afternoon, you can get all of your messages for your campaign scheduled out and ready to go for each day. Print is another way that you can get your story out. This would be by pitching your story to, say, the local newspaper. And flyers are kind of old school, but they do still work. So it's not exactly free, but could be very low cost if you could have flyers printed out and have either an employee or a volunteer hand those out on the weekends at a local grocery store. Radio is another form that you could pitch your story to. So again, just having someone else tell your story and why it matters. And then finally, you can use text message. So you can actually text via Google now, and it's free, and you can send out these mass text messages. And I will actually show that in the next slide. So on the left here is what Google Text looks like. You can use this for free as long as you have a Google account, but you see where there is the name placeholder. If you have the information of your constituents, you have at least their phone numbers and first name, you can use this placeholder to say whatever it is you need to say and put their name in so that it sends out as a mass message. You're not having to send these out one by one, but each person gets that individualized, personalized message. On the right side over here is MailChimp, and it's a text box that would go into your email. So again, you have those merge tags, like the email address, first name, last name, whatever piece you want to use. We would recommend putting like, hello, Sally, or whoever. So whenever these get sent out, each person gets their name on that email. And these are both free platforms. MailChimp is free up to 2,000 audience members.
So this was a case study that I looked at that was just a short campaign that was very successful. And you should look this one up. It's kind of fun. This is actually a video that they did, just 2 or 3 minutes, that's on Facebook and YouTube. I mean, there's several places that they used it, but this was an organization called KIF1A, and they work to find research for this genetic disorder, a neurological disorder. And so they needed research money. Well, instead of asking for research donations, they had a lot of their families who were involved, because this usually hurts children. They had a lot of their families do these little short vignette videos on "We Need a Mouse." So, you know, most of the research today starts on a mouse. Only 2% of those of that research that works on a mouse will actually translate to a human, but you have to start everything there. And so they did this cute little Christmas campaign, "We Need a Mouse," and all these little families did a little video that they posted out in different places. And if you watch this video later, it's these little kids are saying, "We need a mouse, a smart mouse. We need a mouse." And it just kind of carried itself on simply because of the fact that it gave people a thought to donate, simply because to make sure these kids get what they needed. And so I thought that one was a really cute campaign that could be very short, but very easily done. Next slide. This one was another one that I thought was just kind of fun. It had a little twist to it. It was the Hella Yes matching gift campaign. And this campaign was about this group, this Teton County Search and Rescue, and they needed a helicopter and staff. And so they had a matching gift that if they could raise a certain amount of money, they could get this helicopter. And so these people are not prisoners. They're actually people who had been saved by a helicopter ride. And so they're putting the day that they were saved by a helicopter team. And the campaign was Hella Yes, vote yes for the helicopter. And I thought it was just kind of a little twist on something that's a little bit, could have been sad, but was a fun twist to a campaign that made people get up and go. And apparently it was very, very successful. They got their helicopter. So just a few final tips. Laura has already told you, message in multiple channels with the same message. Use positive, actionable language. Humor is never a bad thing. We're coming out of a pandemic. Maybe a smile would make everyone a little better, right? Provide the link to your website. And as you get closer to actual April 8th, I would add the link to NWA Gives so that they can go to that directly from whatever it is, whatever message you're sending out. Laura?
All right, so to give you a tangible item that you can use in this whole 6-week process, we'll be sending, or actually I believe Carol will be sending out this campaign planner that you can adjust as needed. But this is kind of our recommendation of what you do to get started. So again, you have these 6 weeks as your marketing campaign, your branding campaign. What do you do? So on the website, for example, we have you posting a blog post every 2 weeks for a total of 3 times during the 6 weeks. These don't have to be super elaborate or long, just as long as you get your story across and why it's important that people show up on April 8th. If you jump down to social media, you'll see Facebook posts. We have you posting 3 times a week. Now this could also be 5, just depending on what your content is and if you have enough to post that week, for a total of 18 times. If you move down to email, we have you sending out an e-blast every week. And then whenever it gets to be the day before the campaign and the day of, we also recommend you send an email out then. An email is actually an interesting piece. If you can, if you can gather up people's emails as they're donating, you're able to follow up with them. So it's really helpful if you can, after this campaign, say, hey, this is what happened. This is how much money we raised, and this is what it's going to do for the people that we serve. That's a great stewardship point that we recommend you use. You can also pitch your story to either the newspaper or a local radio station. If you're going to do that, since you only have 6 weeks, you need to do it like right now. So you don't have much time for that. If you can get it out there, that would be great coverage. On the flyers, we have you going out once a week for a total of 6 times. And then we have you sending out those text messages along the same frequency as those emails. So weekly, and then the day before and day of the campaign. If you wanted to be more involved, you could also do several times on the day of. Just don't get to be too much and be overbearing. But again, you will have access to this deliverable and get to adjust it as you need for your needs. All right, do we have any questions?
We packed a lot in, I know, for a little 30-minute, but do we have questions on that?
I have one recommendation for your radio. I don't know if everyone here knows, but it is super easy to get onto our local NPR station, KUAF. If you send an email to pete@kuaf.com, they are always looking to have local nonprofits on their community spotlight. So I highly recommend that you send him an email, and please, 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 if you get a chance, mention that you're participating in NWA Gives. So we've been on once already. We'll probably be on twice more, but it's a really great way to get your message out.
Awesome. So Tim asked, do you have a recommended process for branding? Are you talking about the very beginning, like with a logo and everything? Or could you expand on that a little?
Yeah. So it's easier to talk than type. Sorry.
Yeah.
So like I'm looking at a big whiteboard right here, and it's got some stuff I'm starting to write. So we're trying to think creatively, and I'm just trying to figure out, is there a recommended, like right now I'm going from a whiteboard to a concept at some point that we'll begin to push out. So I'm just wondering, is there a creative process that you recommend? Do this, then do this, then do this, or what do you recommend in that area?
Yeah, that's a lot. I would recommend simply listening and hearing from anyone that your organization impacts. So that's the board, the staff, volunteers, but also the people that you serve, and kind of getting their thoughts on like, what is it that you do? Why do you matter? Because that I think will go a long way to the public. So maybe kind of condensing those thoughts into a few like strong words or reasons that you exist, something like that, I think would be really helpful. I don't know that there's a necessarily like a 1, 2, 3 step process, but you're doing it. It's just a lot of brainstorming.
And I think it's a funnel, just like Laura's saying. You really have to funnel the information from your big whiteboard down into a vision board of, different images, different colors, different even fonts, and then on down to what your branding really should be. But that takes a while. That takes more than the 6 weeks.
Well, you had mentioned, earlier, just the concept of working kind of from your mission and vision statements. I've got all that stuff.
Okay.
And so in your mind, are you saying that that's the core of the branding, and then now I'm just looking for a clever hook? I mean, is that what we're saying?
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly it. So you want all of your messages, all of your whole strategy needs to come back to that why, your mission, your vision. So essentially the fun piece of the branding campaign, that marketing piece, is something that will make people like take a second look, right? So I think that's what you're looking for, is that clever hook. And that part, honestly, is just like a brainstorming session with people and trying to get outside views of, is this impactful? Do people respond well to this? So maybe having a few people who aren't as close to the organization see an example of what you're coming up with and say like, hey, does this make sense to you? Does this make you intrigued or want to learn more? Yeah, but I would start with that, because if you already have the foundation, it needs to be a part of your messaging, but you can kind of give pieces of that at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Well, if anybody thinks of questions, I'm sure that Tony and Laura would be open to answering them privately. But also, we have on Thursday our Better Together session at noon. So come armed with any of your questions and we can all work together to try and answer them. So if you're working on your own branding and telling your own story, that's a great opportunity to come tell us your story, and we'll tell you whether it makes an impact on us or not.
I wonder if since there's just a few people on the call, I'm wondering if some of you other would maybe share what some of your branding, what you're doing on this campaign. That might be interesting. Or are you on the whiteboard like me?
Well, hopefully, Tim, that planner, once you kind of have your brand down, as your colors and everything, but surely the name of your organization, all of that, I think you would be able to use that planner to develop a plan of what to do in the next 6 weeks, right? So like, what are all of you planning for the next 6 weeks?
And I will just add to that too. Not every message you send out has to be clever or funny or really interesting. Like it can be as simple as this is who we are and this is what we do. And actually people need to hear that. So you don't have to have a super catchy like tagline or message on every single post. I mean, it does help with like the memorability, you know, just like the "we need a mouse" thing. But it doesn't have to be super catchy like that, honestly, as long as you're getting your branding out.
I will share. I'm Wendy Printer, and we have Renewing Grace together. And was it Tim that asked the question of other groups?
Yeah.
So Tim, you're not alone. There's a lot of us that are still growing and stuff. And for us, this past year has been a whole new ball game. We're new to Northwest Arkansas. We were from Central Texas, and we moved here not knowing the Center for Nonprofits was here, and joined them. And it's just been a great place to be and grow. We have loved being part of the Rogersville Chamber of Commerce, just the webinars and the Northwest Arkansas Gives. We joined, I think, October's Northwest Arkansas Gives, but didn't do a whole lot. We're learning the process, but for us this past year, we've really streamlined what we're focusing on, because we have a heart like many to serve in many ways, but we've narrowed it down to two main things, with the others that are just as they come and we feel called to do it and led, we do, but we're doing our trainings and stuff. But we have a new logo being created, even though we have an established one from the past 5 years or so. And we do have someone working on the blogs. They've been working on it. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm trusting it will soon. We're doing the Facebook posts on our group. I think at least once a week. I liked what you all shared about doing it 3 to 5 times a week. That was good. Everything you guys shared was good. So we've worked with our who, what, why, how, etc. But I'm going to come back to this and, make sure we've got the flow, as your founder had said. I think it's Lindsay. Mm-hmm. So I jumped on here just because I'm letting you know you're not alone, and it's all a growing process. And I love how everyone shares so much up here. Thank you.
And know too that you can always, like, this is a short amount of time, right? So I would really recommend you just focus on that one thing, like Wendy said. But after, say, NWA Gives is over, you can always keep like refining that message in your branding. Yeah, it is an ongoing process, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, as Carol mentioned, we are free to take emails. We had that email slide that she'll be getting out to you. But thank you so much for having us today.
All right. Well, it was our pleasure to have you here. And in probably about an hour, everything will be up on the training website. So do go check it out. And we look forward to seeing you Thursday and again next Tuesday. All right. Bye, everyone.